Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Next, for inviting me. So I'm going to talk about design for the new normal. Peter wanted me to give this talk because it went a bit viral 6 months ago. And so today I've decided to revisit the talk and pick up on the stories I told last time and see where they have been since then. So this is a gun made in a 3D printer by a gun enthusiast called HaveBlue, a member of AR15.com. He did not print the entire gun, only the lower part of the rifle, which is the most important part because it holds the entire firearm and requires a license. In fact, files for this lower part could be found on a website called thingiverse.com, which have been created by a user called King Lud. As I followed up on this story, I found that thingiverse.com had actually removed the files from this site, but this file, along with loads of other files of weapons such as the F1 Russian grenade, or a .22 single-shot firearm can be found on defcat.org, the island of misfit objects, a startup by Texan law graduate Cody Wilson. DefCat aims to provide access to important things that institutions and industries have an interest in keeping us from. Not trinkets, not lawn gnomes, but things like medical devices, drugs, goods, and guns. This is Zemirar Elali, an electrical engineer in Afghanistan, working on one of his 5 autonomous unmanned drones made from bamboo. As you can see from this video, they already fly quite well. However, he insists that they will not be allowed to be used as weapons in his insurgency-wrecked country. Zemiran, a drone hobbyist, got a lot of worried press in the Western media. But it's kind of interesting that while Zemiran created anxiety with his activities, at the moment we are celebrating the Summer of Drones, which is an epic series of up to 34 Nodecopter community events taking place in North America and Europe, where hundreds of developers team up to program drones. This is not art made by a child. It's a representation of genetically modified bacteria that are created by isolating genes from organisms that have plastic degradation properties and inserting them into marine bacteria. And that's what this team of teenage students at the University College London were designing in their biohack lab. If they succeed, these new plastic-eating marine bacteria could be a natural solution for the millions of plastic bits floating in our oceans. They also want these bacteria to become microscopic construction workers and build an artificial plastic island. In fact, here in the heart of the North Pacific Ocean, they've already claimed a new plastic republic. And they did not stop there. To highlight issues of public access to these tools, they teamed up with the London Biohacking Group to create the world's first public biobrick, where DNA code was created and submitted to the parts registry outside of an academic institution. The hackers created a biobrick which can degrade mercury, a common water pollutant found in India. These are no ordinary T-shirts. They are a source of livelihood for this man, Song Hoyun from South Korea, who is attempting to make his own satellite, creating a private connection between you and the universe. Known as the Open Source Satellite Initiative, this was his latest prototype back in September 2012. But just last Friday, after nearly 4 years, finally Hoyun managed to fight all obstacles and launch his satellite into space from Baikonur, Kazakhstan. For all ham radio operators and satellite trackers out there who might be interested in listening to the airwaves, you can tune into that website. These stories might seem unsettling, and it's probably easy to dismiss them as weird anomalies from whimsical people. But however, I'd like to show how these stories also illustrate a new age of technological empowerment. For instance, this image shows 2 kids participating in a Raspberry Jam session, where kids move from being passive consumers of technology to actively engaging with it. They are called Raspberry Jam sessions because they use this, the Raspberry Pi, a credit card-sized computer whose first batch of 10,000 costing a mere €25 sold within minutes, quicker than any iPhone sales. Today, there are 1,500 hackerspaces worldwide, including one in Antarctica, with over 1 million users. A cross between your garage and a clubhouse, they provide space, tools, and like-minded colleagues for unusual DIY projects. And there's even a hackerspace creche in San Francisco called Mothership Hacker Moms, where moms can indulge in some creative hacking to the sound of babbling rugrats. Those UCL students who were designing plastic-eating bacteria are joined annually by 190 other teams from 34 countries who are all editing and building living organisms this very minute. for the iGEM competition, also known as the Olympics of Synthetic Biology. It now includes a stream for entrepreneurs and high school students as well. Besides iGEM, there are over 300 DIY biolabs across the world showing how technologies that were once the remit of scientists are now increasingly cheap and easy to access by ordinary citizens. As of June 2012, Shapeways.com, a website that allows users to make their own products with 3D printing, sold more than 1 million user-created objects. And if you'd rather go and print a 3D object yourself, you can access one of the 130 Fab Labs across the world. Or perhaps you can go to your local high street, which will soon have a version of this Replicator Warehouse, which is a 3D printing service in South London's Discount Sales Mall. The Afghan engineer built his bamboo drone with the help of DIYdrone.com, which has 29,001 members, the latest being myself. And so as the weird stories stack up, it's easy to see that these seemingly peripheral trends are becoming increasingly disruptive. With such new technologies and ways of working, tasks that would once have required the brute force of a nation or a mega corporation can now be achieved by a small company, like-minded group of individuals, or in some cases, a lone individual. For instance, this is the Global Village construction set, where Marcin Jakubowski has made open-source blueprints for low-cost machines, 50 of them, which will allow them to build all the infrastructure a community needs. Within this new age of technological empowerment, I'd like to touch upon 3 interesting aspects that exemplify a bigger trend: crowdsourced innovation, cryptocurrencies, and new nature. First up is crowdsourced innovation that we are all familiar with. For instance, this is the very popular openideo.org, where people from all over the world form teams to tackle difficult challenges and solve wicked problems. And this particular one is about tackling sanitation issues in low-income urban communities. However, at the same time, the very idea of crowdsourced innovation is being lapped up by DARPA, who launched the Fank challenge to design an amphibious infantry fighting vehicle. More than 700 participants forming 150 teams signed up to it as soon as it was announced, and the number is only growing. Martha Kenter, the Undersecretary of Education of the US, noted that the nation's strategic interest is for all branches of government, including defense, to move from an engine of bureaucracy to an engine of innovation. Another aspect of this crowdsourced innovation is something I grew up with in India, where a group of family members or friends will find bits of metal to hack together vehicles from limited resources like this one, allowing up to 10 to 15 people to travel fairly long distances. It's called Jugaad, and has become a thing that is now taught at Harvard Business School. And this same Jugaad innovation becomes Jugaad warfare, where Syrian rebels put together their own version of an armored fighting vehicle called Sham-2, built from the chassis of a car. And here's the inside view of Sham, where a game controller has been hacked to operate the vehicle's gun turret. Most of us, whether interested or not, have been watching how the Bitcoin has stormed into the news again a couple of weeks ago by hitting a high of $265, then fluctuating and even trading as low as $49 before beginning to rise again. Whilst on one side it powers black market sites like the Silk Road, you can also have people like Taylor Moore of Alberta, Canada, who was selling his 2-bedroom bungalow for a reduced price if offered Bitcoins, and this Bitcoin ATM about to be installed in Cyprus. Bitcoins lead to more cryptocurrencies being created and mined, so you have Frycoin, which charges a demurrage fee, and Litecoin, which can be efficiently mined with a consumer-grade hardware. And the third trend is what one might call new nature, where our DNA and the very parts that we are made of are also being newly manufactured. I'd like to show you an excerpt from a film called DNA Dreams, which shows a glimpse into BGI, China's largest genomics company.
Trying to make these pigs more happy and more released, we just put the shoe coat on its legs, and then just let it lie like this.
So are they making a transfer right now? Or?
Yeah, they're making the transfer. They take this uterus out and then make a small hole on the uterus cone, and then inject all these blastocysts inside.
Yes, genetically designed blastocysts. So.
Yes. Hopefully this cell will get pregnant.
And you say they are doing 2 a day? Or
normally they did they transfer 3 recipients every day.
3 recipients?
Yes.
In Denmark, we make perhaps 12 transfer in a whole year, and you do that in 4 days.
Yeah.
You're better than nature now. The success rate is really impressive.
So this is our new stables.
Okay. So when will this be ready for use?
In 1 week.
In 1 week, okay. Yeah.
That's what we call Shenzhen speed.
Yes.
We do everything very fast.
Here we only do the pig cloning, and we have planning another cattle cloning lab in Shandong province. And now there are several people that are working on the sheep cloning in Xinjiang province.
These could soon be the world's smartest babies. The same very company, BGI, have collected DNA samples from 2,000 of the world's smartest people and are sequencing their entire genomes in an attempt to find the alleles which will determine human intelligence. Apparently, they're not far from finding them, and when they do, embryo screening will allow parents to pick up their brightest zygote and potentially bump up every generation's intelligence by 5 to 15 IQ points. And closer to home, you have the company 23andMe. Over the last 6 years, 180,000 people have sent their saliva samples using their cute spit kits in exchange for valuable health and ancestry information. But recently, founder Ann Wojcicki, who happens to be the wife of Google's Sergey Brin, decided to monetize the giant database of genetic information. They opened their treasure trove of genetics data to third-party developers to build new web-based interactive tools. Although current laws prohibit employers and insurance companies from discrimination based on genetic information, but law insurance providers, schools, athletic organizations can all potentially get their hands on your genetic data. And I can't even begin to imagine the impact this will have on dating apps and sites. And I haven't even mentioned Google Glass, the second wave of nuclear proliferation, organized large-scale protests, and extreme weather events. All these trends point to what my friend Scott Smith might call a moment of superdensity, where chaos, uncertainty, rapid change, and realignment of power are fast becoming the new operating parameters. We thus find ourselves in a new situation that is far from the popular notions of normality and have entered the new domain of new normal. In the new normal, technology is open source, patents are old-fashioned, ideas are crowdsourced, people are products, innovation is subversive, design stars are not worshipped. So, what does this mean for innovation in the 21st century? Are there strategies and tools from design to help us effectively engage with the new normal? Design traditionally uses comfortable and well-understood metaphors to cloak novel innovation. As my partner John Arden says, a lot of applied design, marketing, and UX acts like conceptual Valium. Whilst mapping the familiar onto the new and the weird is effective and arguably necessary from a point of view of usability, it also creates a form of hypnosis, dulls the subjective experience of the strange and the unusual by presenting things not as they are, but as facsimiles of the known and the familiar. So how do we interrupt this state of hypnosis, or what Venkatesh Rao calls the normality field? Design for the new normal works to cut through established narratives by engaging with two broad areas of interest. The strange now, whether that's the edge cases I showed earlier, or the disruptive forces that are hidden behind comforting metaphors, and extrapolating current trends to present the sheer breadth of often unsettling future possibilities that lie ahead of us. Now I would like to share a few projects from the Superflux studio as well as other designers that exemplify this approach. In our ongoing project, Dynamic Genetics versus Man, we imagine a world where synthetic biology and gene therapy have moved from the lab and entered the marketplace. In this world, the state's responsibilities have shifted from healthcare provision to the provider of health insurance. By calculating the healthcare cost of specific gene combinations, insurance rates are adjusted on a person-by-person basis, ensuring that individual contributions accurately reflect the healthcare associated with their genome. What new laws and economic models might emerge under these conditions? How will intellectual property be applied and policed when designed genetic material makes its way into people's bodies and their lives? These issues and the wider implication are explored through the lens of a court case brought by Dynamic Genetics, a large gene therapy conglomerate, against Anab Jain, who they accuse of obtaining their copyrighted DNA from a black market clinic. Who owns our genes? Who can patent them? Will we have patented children? And on the flip side, pirated children? How would healthcare models adapt to these new changes? And ultimately, how will we value human life? Within the world of synthetic biology, where nature is being designed, it is perhaps important to create tangible visualizations of worlds where these new organisms start infiltrating real environments. Living systems are capricious and mutate, so how will they be created and how will they live amongst us? For a project exploring the colony collapse disorder, we worked with scientists to imagine a new kind of bee called the beamer bee that would help pollinate our crops made entirely through the powers of biotechnology. We imagined various positive uses for the synthetic bee, from pollinating crops to being kept as a glowing pet. But today, there are defense personnel around the world who are toying with the idea of using miniature drones disguised as bugs or insects for spying purposes. DARPA's ultimate plan is to eventually hack into the insect's own natural senses, allowing the remote control operator to look out of the insect's own eyes instead of attaching a video camera for it to carry. So what's stopping them from making the world's first 100% natural drone, a synthetic bee, as a future surveillance device? For a project, Electronic Countermeasures, in partnership with Tomorrow's Thoughts Today and Eleanor Saiter, we tried to imagine new uses for autonomous drones. Rather than weapons or hobbyist toys, we designed a flock of interactive drones that form their own place-specific temporary Wi-Fi community, a pirate internet. People can upload files, photos, and share data with one another as the drones float above the city. They swarm into formation, broadcasting their pirate network, and then disperse, escaping detention only to reform elsewhere. Moving on to money. Looking at how big financial decisions are made on the basis of a very volatile stock market, designer Xing Tat Chung's The Superstitious Fund is a live experiment in which an algorithm trades based on superstitious beliefs. It makes decisions based on lunar cycles and numerology, creating lucky and unlucky values that influence its behavior. Tobias Revel, in his project 88.7, imagines a world of complete economic liberalization where money is valued over people. It's early 2040s, and an ex-Soviet nuclear-powered icebreaker full of highly qualified traders circles at 88.7 degrees latitude in the Arctic Sea. By circumnavigating the world in 24 hours, it stays in constant contact with trading zones throughout the world. A scenario extrapolated from our current trends, it's a compelling thought experiment as we are forced to reevaluate our current situation. For an installation at the London Science Museum about future energy sources, Anthony Dunn and Fiona Raby wanted to show children energy futures apart from the popular ones such as hydrogen cars. They created artifacts that would bring children in direct contact with a new kind of energy future, where human and animal waste is being used to create energy. The one on the left is a lunchbox with 2 compartments, food and poo, while the one on the right is a radio fueled by blood kept in cute teddy-shaped pouches. In a similar vein, the Bionic Requiem by James Auger initially exists as an anticipatory device. It's a music box poised to play a tune, but it will only do so once it captures enough flying insects to power the microbial fuel cell it houses. Recently, the Guardian newspaper had an article with Eric Schmidt from Google who said, "You have to fight for your privacy or you lose it." Enough to get even more people nervous. But seriously speaking, what strategies to deploy if you'd rather hide from facial recognition bots let loose in the world? Using the inherent dumbness of the facial recognition algorithms against them, Adam Harvey's project employs subversive application of makeup to confuse the algorithm. This is the Nevada desert. Buried in its vastness is Jason Rohrer's A Game for Someone, which is a board game not to be played for at least 2,000 years. The 18 by 18 board and all the game artifacts are built out of 30 pounds of resilient titanium metal, and its rules were play-tested by an artificial intelligence that then reiterated until the intelligence decided that it was balanced. Rohrer laid out the game's rules on 3 pages of archival acid-free paper, sealed them in a Pyrex glass tube, and buried them. A bunch of envelopes were passed around in the audience at the Game Design Challenge with 900 sets of GPS coordinates on each of them. He estimates that if one person visited a set of coordinates each day, the game would be discovered within 2,700 years. So, these projects bypass the established narratives about the present and the future that create the hypnosis of normality, and in doing so allow for an emotional connection with the raw weirdness of our times, opening up an array of possibilities. My hope is that this emotional connection to the unknown becomes a catalyst for us to engage with it and actually innovate in a way that is meaningful and desirable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so that was actually was a big ride to like a lot of topics. We have a few minutes for questions. There's like one thing in particular, because we talked politics beforehand. How do all these things actually inform policy? How can they inform policy? How can states and governments even react to these kind of changes?
I mean, that's where I feel that design still has a role to play in infiltrating, in sort of making sense of this, and to be able to create projects and sort of work with policymakers. I mean, that's an ultimate ambition if we can have policy changes, but policy takes a long time to make, and governments live only for short time, so that's a bit of a problem, but yeah.
Another topic, equally big. How about education? How can we get the educational system to even prepare anyone for those kind of changes? Because many things you said are either completely grassroots or they come from high-tech research. But it seems to be a big gap in the middle. Yeah,
I mean, I have a personal interest in it because we are working on an educational platform at the minute, and we feel that children are being schooled for a system or for a world that doesn't exist anymore. So how can we start infiltrating the educational system and start creating models that actually create sort of skills around creativity and ingenuity that children will need for the near future?
Okay, then last question already. You mentioned that we live in what you called a moment of superdensity. Mm-hmm. Is there ever going to be a moment where we go back to normal?
Yes, this is it. That's the answer.
Fair enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you.